Hello, welcome to the world of operations. My name is Burian. I'm with the IDC as a senior director and leader of future operations practice. And today I'm going to tell you about why digital infrastructure could be seen and considered as a cornerstone of enterprise resilience. But before we start, let's say set up the scene a little bit, right? So we all are coming through the complicated times as a people, as a society, and even as a, let's say, business environment, as a companies, right? And pandemic, I mean, everybody's already tired talking about the pandemic, but the truth is that it really hit the society and the business pretty hard. And now we're also living in an aftermath of that, right? So, and that's resulted, especially, I mean, there's, let's say, number of situations coming from that, but that's really what we see. It's that uncertainty in the business environment and the change of the customer, right? Of customer behavior. And that's resulted in the need of bringing in new ways of work, right? In a remote, touchless, contactless environment. And we also see that there's a focus on the customer. It should be should be more than ever, right? Like during these days. By the way, let me share the results of the survey we did in IDC recently. This is from the spring, but the data is pretty much relevant. I mean, the trends are pretty much still valid even during these days. And you can see that almost like 2/3 of our respondents to our survey are still at the cost optimization phase, right? While let's say the other third, these companies, they said that see themselves being in a, let's say, return to growth. They do the investments already, right? And so the trend, I would say the trend is every month is more and more positive. On the other hand, it's been slowed down by some other reasons, like a lack of people. Like we can see it in Europe, we can see it in the US. Right, the prices of commodities are getting higher. The supply chains have been disrupted. Right, so and it all matters to the world of operations. Right, and let me tell you one thing, which is very important, very interesting. That I mean, until the pandemic, a lot of companies were driven by let's say the risk analysis. Right, the companies were trying to identify the risks. And then they did the measures or trying to set up the measures to mitigate or lower the risks, right? But the truth was that, I mean, no one is really able to to identify all the risks that might happen, right? It's just impossible. And that's why the organizations, they shifted a little bit to let's say, the strategy of being resilient, right? Of being, and the resiliency, right? And by the way, why do we talk here about the operations? Just let me maybe remind this as well. Operations typically covers, I mean, this is where most of the value is being produced or created, right? So and thus it's crucial for a customer experience. Also, the operations is crucial for the performance and health of the whole organization, and it typically covers the biggest number of people in the organizations. And also it's supporting the business, it provides the data for the decision making. And on the other hand, this is such a complex environment. Typically, this is also very vulnerable from a perspective of the cyber attacks, for example, especially the operations technology part, right? What's quite interesting here is that this is pretty much valid for, I mean, across all the industries. If it's manufacturing, energy, healthcare, transportation, or even retail or financial institutions. When we can just focus on the C-level people, C-suite, is also sustainability. And this is not just environmental or social sustainability, but this is also, we're talking about the business sustainability of the business. And that's not, and generally speaking, the sustainability is not just driven by a let's say the EU regulations or the government rules, but also it's pretty much driven by the customers, by the value chain, by the clients, but also by the, for example, investment funds, right? So that sustainability perspective is just a must, and it's always within the top priorities of the companies. Then, if we talk about, let me get back a little bit to the resiliency. I already tried to explain, I mean, why it matters, right? So that's a different perspective of being risk-driven versus being really resilient, right? And we can see in IDC the resiliency as let's say, the sort of setup where the company is able to, let's say, sort of absorb almost any shock that comes to it, right? And not just to absorb it, right, but also to restore business operations in timely fashion. And that makes us to go to the digital resiliency. And this is about the resiliency decision making, about using the digital technology to empower the decision making, and also this is not just like to survive any disruption, but it's also about ability to, let's say, leverage it and create the business opportunity out of it, right? And this is where the technology plays a significant role. By the way, we asked our let's say customers, or we did a survey recently asking companies, to what extent they are, resilient, or what their plans were, right? And you can see here that almost like a half of the respondents, they are still working on the, let's say, business. They continue in the business as usual, right? So, and they try to really identify the risks, and they are not very familiar with this resiliency concept. 25% of the respondents, they stressed they already have plans in place, and just around like a 1/5, 19% said that they were prepared for the future business disruptions, right? And mostly that's because they adopted a digital technology, right? So this all resulted into the strategic priorities, right? Let me just name a couple of them very briefly, right? We see there's a customer satisfaction area, right? So it's about, let's say, rethinking the whole, let's say, the business from the end customer perspective, coming with the new business models, with the new services, and improving the customer experience. Then there's a big green business. This is not just about regulations and compliance, but it's also about the ability to, let's say, get also like a benefit from a business point of view, right? From bigger business. And this is especially, it's not just about the costs, saving the costs, but also about the customer perceptions, and about, let's say, being more visible at the market, and through that to be also able to get, for example, like new orders, new business. When we talk about the innovation in IDC world, that's a lot about, or this is addressing quite a lot the building the application, the business applications, and it's scaling the innovation and bringing it to the market as soon as possible. We will also amplify the digital thread as one of the core technology for the innovation process. When we talk about the operational efficiency, that's all about being resilient, agile, efficient, right? By the way, let me share the prediction here that by 2024, 60% of industrial organizations will integrate data from the edge OT systems with the cloud-based reporting analytics, moving from a single asset use to a site-wide operational awareness. So breaking the silos, let's say, right? Another priority, that's employee productivity. This is a lot about let's say, getting the right people for the right position with the right skill set, right? And that's because we see the gap is really getting bigger between what companies need, and what they're looking for, and the capabilities of the people. So reskilling, upskilling is definitely also one of the C-suite key priorities, right? And it all resulted into the intelligent enterprise. So it's enterprise which is based on data, on resilient decision making, single source of truth. I mean, this is something we've been defining in IDC or talking about in IDC for years, right? And maybe let me tell you here that also one of the predictions would say that by 2023, 20% of new industrial assets deployed will leverage a pre-configured digital twins to commission assets faster, right? So that's really, I mean, using the digital twins, using the data. That's what the intelligent enterprise should be about. But to be able to reach this level, we need to think about transforming the core of the IT, right? So we talk here about the business platformization, utilizing the platforms which should be open, which should be modular, interoperable, and this all should, let's say, include also the assets, IT, OT integration, digital twin. I already mentioned that. People for hybrid work models, customers, and processes. Right. What's very important to see here that that there's a need for this frictionless IT, right? Because the diversity of the services in a hybrid IT creates frictions, right? So we see it's better to move towards the self-driving IT, leveraging, for example, codeless automation. Then that's also important to have that clarity to the problems, because more and more services are delivered through the cloud and corporate channels, right? So it's quite difficult to maintain performance and determining the root causes. And the third area, that's security, because these hybrid environments, they are this perfect place for vulnerabilities, right? And that's why this is really, the security is really, it's almost always the top three, let's say, priorities when we ask the IT people about what they're gonna focus on in a short and even long-term period, right? So that leads me to the another, let's say, the output of IDC survey. We asked the IT guys about their priorities, right, within the next 12 months. And as you can see, the digital trust always, I mean, again, not number one priorities, right? Then multi-cloud services, multi-cloud is getting the attention, of course. Automation and orchestration, that's for the reducing the complications. API-centric development, DevOps, and also as another example is artificial intelligence, machine learning in business cases. That's what we call it somehow. It's sometimes like this could be very helpful for so-called micro decisions, right? So let technology do these micro decisions, and let the humans do the, let's say, the strategic planning and strategic decision making. Right? Again, so to be really able to set up this intelligent environment, the digital infrastructure, it's crucial here. We call it Cornerstone Operations. When we ask the IT people reorganizations, right, what their priorities within the next 2 years would be when it comes to the resilience concept, then we are told, I mean, you can see 60%, 66% would focus on this business operations programs, including the augmentation of people of with the right information at the right time. But even like 56% are focusing on the digital infrastructure programs, right? So resilient infrastructure, cloud, mentioned already, right? Converged infrastructure, containerization, autonomous IT. These are all the priorities from perspective of building the really reliable, flexible, modern infrastructure. Speaking of cloud, let me just remind you that the future of digital infrastructure is being a pillar of digital infrastructure is a pillar of the digital enterprise, right? And the technology goes pretty much beyond the operations and becomes a business architecture, right? So this is probably a little bit, let's say, the shift or the change before, as it was, I mean, in the past, right? When operations was pretty much living for itself. Now it's really the enabler, I would say, or supporting the business significantly, and it's also and the operations performance is also pretty much is impacting the customer experience, right? And so we see that digital infrastructure would be ubiquitous, everywhere, autonomous, and definitely the cloud centric. So this enables the product, services, digital experience could be effectively scaled. Thinking of the cloud benefits, I think that we don't need to convince each other what the benefits would be here, right? So we can see the classic KPIs like cost reductions, flexibility improvement, availability improvement, but also there's a positive impact on the rationalization or energy consumption reduction, right? So again, we're talking about the sustainability. And now we are getting to the last slide, and let me provide you with some takes, with some recommendations to the end, right? So one would be adopt the digital resilience concept, utilize cloud to scale services fitting your needs, customizing applications, and access the cloud services from anywhere. Modernize, simplify the digital infrastructure, keep it running, use the right digital tools. So especially to cut the complexity in it, empower the decision-making process, adapt the concept of the data flow up and down to really empower the resilient decision-making, automate analytics, and develop accurate predictions to be able to create actionable insights. Then, and finally, think of the security as I would say, in a context of a cyber resiliency. That meaning that you must intelligently adapt your security to respond to evolving that threat landscapes, right? With that, I would like to finish here. Thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy the event.